Welcome to the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 273, Automation. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss the ins and outs of running your computer repair business. Computer Repair Podcast is brought to you by Reclaim Me Pro, the all-in-one highly configurable data recovery software. For a free 14-day trial, go to reclaimme-pro.com. Use the offer code Podnutz for a 50% discount. And also by FreshBooks, the simple, pain-free invoicing solution for freelancers and small business owners. For a free 30-day trial, just go to freshbooks.com/Podnutz. Enter Podnutz in the How Did You Hear About Us section. All right. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have John Dubinsky from the Maven Group. How you doing, John?
Better than I deserve, Jeff.
Awesome, man. And also, first time on the live show, Paul Joyner from Sysadmin Today. Paul, how you doing?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome to have you.
Hey, I just want to step in right now. It's an honor to have Paul, his podcast is great, and it's awesome that he's on the show here with us today. So I know he'd never say that himself, but Paul, I love your show, man. So thanks
Awesome,
for doing
man.
that.
Oh, man, that's very nice, man. Thanks. Appreciate that.
All right, let's take care of a little business, and then we will get into our tips. The IT Owner's Compass. Get help navigating your IT business August 24th through the 26th, 2018 in Chicago, Illinois. Brand new news. It is sold out. Yes. All the tickets are gone at this point. Now, what you can do is you can go over to itocompass.com and you can sign up on a waiting list to get a ticket or something if somebody cancels. You can go ahead and do that, and we'll get you the information. But yeah, go over there, still check it out. But right now, all the tickets are sold. So awesome job to Lori Tisnai from Computer Concepts USA and Matt Rodella from Tech Site Builder. They have put something together that everybody is really buying into, and that's awesome. I think this is I don't want to say a first, but this is very uncommon for events like this to get sold out this quick in advance. Now, August is not that far away, but a lot of other events were not able to do this. And I think we've kind of moved past that and have made something happen that doesn't normally happen. So kudos to those guys. All right. So let's go ahead and start with John. I'm going to throw it to you since you're the veteran here. If you could share a tip or story with us that we could learn from.
Got a little tip this week. Oh, and I took the box out of my office. Otherwise, I'd be having a product placement commercial as well. So on a whim, I was scrolling through Amazon deals of the day on my phone, and I purchased something called the DB Power Portable Car Jump Starter. All right. Sounds crazy. It's about $70. I'll put a link in the show notes. But what this is if you can imagine a really huge laptop battery, or mobile phone battery that you leave in your car that can actually jump your car. Ooh. And I had forgotten all about it. It's been riding around in my Jeep Wrangler for a while, but I needed it the other day. I jumped the young lady's car with my DB Power Master, and it worked flawlessly. It was easy, no long cables. I plugged it in. She started her car. I packed it back up. But the cool thing about this thing, it actually will obviously jump your car, but on the device itself, it has a small flashlight. So you can fire that up if you need that. It also has a bunch of USB ports on the side of it. So if you have other gear in your car that will charge from USB, your phone, your tablet. I have this little portable drill from Black & Decker that actually charges through a USB cable. It will charge all those devices too. So it's just a handy little thing to have in the car. And my thought was, when you have to roll a truck because your automation's breaking down and it didn't do what you needed it to do, and it's just you, and maybe you're out there in the middle of the night, you got something to jump your own car without any worries. So really handy item under $100, and I'll put a link in the show notes.
Awesome, man. That is a great tip. It's nice. It's better than I used to have one that was actually I still do, but it sits in the garage because it's so huge to jump the car, and you've still got the long cables and stuff. That is really cool.
No, this thing is smaller than half a loaf of bread.
Okay. Wow.
Comes in a nice case and everything. So
very cool. All right, Paul, if you could share a tip or story with us that we could learn from, that would be great.
Well, got one that I worked on last week. For those who work a lot with remote desktop services, also known as terminal services, with the newer versions of Windows Server 2012 R2 and newer, and they have a new feature called profile disks. And basically what that's going to do is allow if you have multiple terminal servers, the user, regardless if they log in, it's going to be a fast login between physical servers that you connect to. Long story short, if you're going to use profile disks, one tip to do is with the root recycle bin permissions for each server. It's a good idea to go into there and set domain users to be able to modify those root level permissions, because what happens is, not all the times, it's actually kind of a known bug with Microsoft right now, is when a user tries to delete something from the desktop, and of course it goes straight to recycle bin, they'll get an error. The workaround will be hold down shift, press delete, and go from there. But just for anybody using profile disk and multiple remote desktop services servers, update those permissions on the root recycle bin. It'll save you a lot of headache.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. So let's see. What is my tip for today? You would think I would come prepared, but as John knows, not normally. No, I go back to one of the things we've talked about in the past, and I will reiterate this again since the ITO Compass is sold out, and that is invest in yourself. And what I mean by that is invest in your education, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Invest in the things that you need to learn, and invest in your productivity, the people you hang out with. John talked a couple weeks ago about masterminds, and I think this is very important. And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time in their business. And because they spend a lot of time in their business, a lot of times they don't know how to actually get away from their business, John. And so because of that, they have to force themselves to be able to put the business aside for a second, and the customers will be just fine. And you go do something not only for yourself, but you can do it in a fun way that will also help you in your business. So it's a win-win situation. It's not just, now vacations are important and all that stuff too, but you also need that time away where you need to separate yourself and be able to work on your business, have a clear mindset going into working on your business, so that you can look at maybe some of the holes that you have in your business, and that you can fill those holes with expedient ways of doing different things. And so the only time you're going to be able to do that is if you get away. And I don't care whether that's out at a lake, in a cabin, a hotel room, wherever, but you have to get away, because a lot of times what ends up happening, I know for myself, is I sit in this house or I sit in my office and there are a bazillion things to do, and it never, ever stops. As soon as I get away from my house or my office and I'm out elsewhere, especially if I leave electronics behind, I am able to just relax for the first time in probably months. And so it gives you time to recharge, because you can't keep doing this business over and over and over again without recharging yourself. In other words, think about it like this. If you were a battery, John, and you were just giving away all the charge that you had built up inside of you, and you were giving it away to your customers, you were giving it away to other people. Now, at some point or another, that battery is going to run out of charge. So that's why they came up with, you need to recharge, because that's actually kind of what it's talking about. You're giving. You've got to be able to take the time to be able to recharge and take that stuff back in, so that you can give more charge back out. I know this is deep and philosophical, but this is the essence of owning your own business, and especially in this type of business, because a lot of people, for whatever reason, maybe it's the stigma that's out there of, we're not really that smart. The things that we do are not, they're nothing astounding. It's not like being a plumber or, a car mechanic or anything. And I beg to differ. There are differences to all those types of businesses, but we are just as smart and just as capable and just as skilled in doing those types of things. And so we need to remember that. And that's why we do this show, because we want to talk about things that can help you in your business. And so you can take that stuff and move forward with how you do your business, instead of just doing the same thing over and over again. Again, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I hear a lot of people out in the industry complaining, but they're not really doing anything to help themselves. So I encourage you, especially if you're just starting out, this is the time to educate yourself and learn the things you need to learn to make your life better. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll get into our main topic. Our show today is brought to you by Reclaim Me Pro, a specially tailored data recovery toolkit for data recovery technicians, both beginners and experts. It recovers data from multiple file systems from Windows, Linux, and Mac, including REFS, BTRFS, VMFS, and APES, which is the new Apple file system. You need to have that one. Finds lost partitions, recovers data from various RAIDs, from RAID 0 to RAID 6. I think that covers most everything in between. Reads most partitioning schemes from Microsoft LDM to Linux LVM, the wide range of supported NAS models, including Drobo devices. Definitely want to, with as many people as you're using NASs nowadays, you really have to have a way to basically put that information back together if you have failing drives. Powerful RAID recovery and RAID analysis tools for complex RAID recovery. Comprehensive technical support, including data recovery training, which is your key to understanding partitions, file systems, and RAID recovery. Try it free for 14 days over at reclaimme-pro.com. When you decide to purchase the software, use the offer code Podnutz for a 50% discount. Yeah, definitely check it out for 14-day free trial. You can't beat it. All right. Our topic today is talking about automation. And this was brought to us by none other than our newest guest, Paul Joyner. So, Paul, I'm going to have you kick it off and kind of give us an overview of what you were thinking about when you were talking about automation. I'm assuming things automating your business in some form or fashion, but I wanted to see kind of where you were at.
Well, Jeff, I broke it down because we've been working on a lot of this, back at work, and I really have it broken down in two different categories. We have business automation, like business workflows, and then we also have, of course, our IT automation, in the trenches of what we do. And I just thought, because we're thinking about topics, I thought, man, this might be something to think about. So for like business workflows or business automation, what are some of the things we do? We have sales, we have prospecting, we have quoting, we have onboarding, invoicing, billing, marketing, ticketing, and this at a high level. These are just some of the things that, how can we make this easier? What tools do we use? What's the best? Because sometimes you can take it to the nth degree, and but a good balance of what we like to try to do. And so, for instance, my first topic, I got like sales, CRM. How do we track our sales? How do we track opportunities out there? And maybe with somebody starting off, you probably have like a spreadsheet of some sort, or the different CRM tools out there. Personally, from our perspective, we're looking at something kind of like a ConnectWise type system that has like a module based into there. And it's really difficult because one thing we're finding is like when you're rapidly growing and you go through those growing pains, and not having some of these tools in place can make it very difficult, very, very difficult. And we losing opportunity and revenue because of not having some automation in place, or having checks and balances and workflows in place. And I thought this would be a great topic. Hopefully, everybody can get some value out of it.
All right, awesome. John, when you think about automation in your business, I know this is one of the things that you chase constantly, because you want automation to work for you, especially as a one-man band. And it's very important for that stuff to work on a regular basis versus not working and causing you more problems than it should. Oh, I think we just lost John.
We did. Oh, no.
He'll be back. He must be having some connection errors. So I think when we talk about automation, and from a sales standpoint, I think this is where a lot of people, especially the people, probably the listeners to this show, they want to do sales, they want to do marketing type things, and you almost, especially a lot of the one-person shops, you really have to figure out a way, how do I automate this? Or I need to figure out a way to pay somebody. And maybe there are ways to do this. Now, have you seen it from a perspective of a sales, having an actual salesperson, obviously in a larger organization, versus doing it bootstrap style, as far as being able to figure out a way to automate the process? Like, I don't know, for us, I can only think of myself for, using something like Repair Shopper. It can send out automated emails for me as I set them up, if I choose to do that. Now, you still have to do that, though.
Yes. Well, just to give you an idea of maybe some lost revenue. Say you have a team of 5. Okay, you might have somebody like an office personnel, like a business administration person, maybe a salesperson, and maybe have 2 or 3 techs that take phone calls. Maybe that they're out in the field. One thing that, at least from my perspective, that we need is some way to manage that or to automate that, or a system that does it for us. Is like, for instance, you go out in the field and a tech is out there, and maybe they overhear that maybe somebody needs a printer, or maybe somebody's having a hard time with a computer, and by the time they get back to the office, maybe they forgot about it. So that's lost revenue. So that could be something that can be put into a pipeline. That's probably a good word to use here. And having a system that can, somebody can put in, so and-so needs this, so-and-so needs that, overheard, opportunity for, document management or something along those lines. And having a system where you can see your pipeline, control your pipeline, and those opportunities, and then have those go from, once they're in there, that can go to the sales department, and then they can get more information, and then once they have that, then that can automate over to maybe to a quoting system to quote it, and if they approve it, and then that can automatically be set up as a project to implement the system. So things like that. So we've been seeing really good success when having a system like that in place. Because before, it was either it was forgotten, or it was written down and forgotten, or we just didn't have a way to see what our abilities were, or what we had in the pipeline, and having a system to do that for us has been great.
Okay, so there's not, now it sounds like there's some automation to pass it through the chain.
Yes,
and it sounds like but during that process too, you have different people who are touching that to make it go from point A to point D, or whatever that might be. So now I know you said you use ConnectWise, and is a lot of that stuff built into their system? I'm not familiar with it, so I really don't know.
Yeah, they have a. I'm just using this example because I come from Autotask background as well, and I wrote it down in here. And what we have is you have prospect to quoting to closing the quote to project to invoice, and you have workflows that built in here. And you might have automation procedures for the management has to approve it. So you have a prospect, and then once they're into the system, there might be a workflow saying, okay, I went on site, this is what they need. So we got a quoting, and even in the quoting, there's some automation in that, like templates that are put in for, like, maybe you need a server, there may be a template for a new server, a template for Office 365 implementation. You get the gist. And then that will go through an improvement process or approval process, which is automated. And then you have sales to try to close the deal, like reminders and follow up, and, percentages of, where you at on this type of thing. And then once it's all in the system, instead of redoing it all and typing it all up again, it'll automatically be converted to a project in the system, almost like a glorified ticket, if you will. But, where you have, you can assign different things to different other people that are doing things, like procurement and, shipping and receiving type stuff, and putting it in the system, racking and cabling. You get the drill. And then, of course, once it's done, then you have a workflow and checkpoint system to invoice the project and go from there. And doing it all manually, which I've done, is a ton of work. So having a system that can do that for you, it'll just save you a lot of time. And one thing to really be mindful of is consistency across your customer base, because it's very difficult to be consistent when doing it manually. And having an automated process will keep you consistent, which will obviously, hopefully will produce a better customer experience.
Right. And I think one of the things that when it comes to that standpoint, even it doesn't really matter the size of your business, because if you set up a lot of these things like templates and stuff like that ahead of time, or you set up these certain types of projects or things that you do, then it can go through an automated process. And from a standpoint of a one-person shop, they can basically take that, and there is no red tape because they can pass it up and go, yep, 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 yep. But I agree with you. It has to be put in something that's going to push it through each and every level, because you're right. If we do stuff manually, then it is almost always different every time, because we don't follow a process. Let's just be honest. We're not going to pull out of our process checklist and go, okay, did I do this? Did I do that? No, we're just going to go. We're going to get it done, and hopefully we got most of it right.
Yeah, or better yet, who approved this? That's a big
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. It's like, why was this ordered? This wasn't QA'd, type of thing. You forgot, this group of Microsoft licenses. I mean, now we got to, put it all back together again and redo the lease or something along those lines. It's always, a catch.
Right.
But yeah, having that automation really keeps, like I said, the consistency is huge.
So now let's move ahead. So obviously sales is one of those things. You have things like marketing, and obviously there's also tools and things that you can use in your business as far as automating your business to make your job that much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess from things like a standpoint of, a ticketing system or a CRM,
mm-hmm.
Obviously if you have something where you're putting the information in once and you can go back and you've already got that information in there, you can go back and you can have it automatically do things, whether it's sending emails or whether it's, communicating certain things as you're going through the process of, taking care of that customer. So there are a lot of things that automation can definitely help with in these areas. John, you're back.
I am back. I had a Comcastic moment. Sorry about that.
Comcastic. All right. We love Comcast.
Well, the great news is that I used a little bit of automation to fix my problem. Well, semi-automation. Is that I didn't have to get up, that I simply logged in through my local LAN to my Watt box and rebooted my Comcast modem without having to go up to my rack. So
Nice.
Semi-automation. As soon as I did that, I was back online. So who knows what happened? But
hey, you know what? You were able to sit in your chair and you did not have to roll a truck.
Right. That's right. Ride my tricycle up to the rack. So anyways, I'm sorry.
That's all right, John. We were talking about sales automation and automating from a process of going through a system. Now, Paul's talking about it from passing from one hand to another in an automated process system. But even from our standpoint, you can take those processes and set things up that you do all the time and have those ready to go so that you have more of an automation in your business. And I think a lot of times it's easier to set that stuff up ahead of time instead of waiting until, like Paul said earlier, you're swamped and you just can't take the time to get everything set up. So
I can only visualize what Paul's organization must look like with inside and outside sales, and then working with product managers and all that. From my point of view as being the sole, one-man army or whatever, I control that whole channel myself, but there's automation in that, or at least pre-planning where have your templates set up for your estimates, for all that kind of stuff prior to getting busy, have a set process in place of automation where, it might just be a quote for a keyboard or something, one simple item, but still put together a little estimate, send it out of wherever you send it out of. Because the one time that you get lazy and you don't do that, it's going to be 2 months later that the user calls you back, or whoever you sent the estimate to, and says, well, what were those numbers again? So then you're going to have to dig through your email. You're going to have to dig through the process. It's just like poor documentation. If you just get it done right the first time, and I'm the pot calling the kettle black here a little bit, if you just get it done right the first time, then you don't have to worry about doing it again later.
I'm with you, brother. Hey, I can't tell you how many times I went in my spreadsheet and said, wait a minute, something's missing.
Well, I gotta admit, on the easy stuff that I know, like a lot of times, if there's this, some switching or stuff or commonality of parts that I use all of the time, sometimes I'll just do a little quickie quote or a quickie estimate in email and shoot it off, and it always bites me in the butt because there's always something there. And then, regardless if you're dealing with a user that's got their stuff together on the other end, and then they'll email you back and say, "Well, I thought you said this, and it included this." And then you got to go through the whole process of looking like an idiot. So I've been there. So the best bet is just do a legitimate estimate or quote and follow whatever process, have that process, have it automated as much as you can at the beginning.
Yeah, I tell you, quoting in general is very time consuming for us. I'm not sure how it is for you guys. I mean, trying to big projects or just, a single computer. It before it used to be a manual process, and we're in the process of making this more automated, or a system where and John hit the nail on the head with templates, where if you're selling a solution, you have solution-based templates. So if you have a laptop, it'll boom, there's your laptop, and then it'll connect to all your disties and pull in the pricing in your catalogs and be consistent with what you actually hand off to the customer. And yeah, quoting for me. Somebody asked me, I think, matter of fact, I think it was you, Jeff, in the podcast that we did. You said, what was one of your favorite things you like about the business, and one of the things you didn't? And I remember I said, one of the things I hate about the business is doing the quoting aspect of it, because you don't get paid for that. It's so much dead time putting those things together.
And it's definitely underappreciated because the customer has absolutely no idea all the effort you're putting into it. And it's kind of funny as we're talking about this, it makes me think back to all the other shows and everything we talk about, how standardization helps this as well. Mm-hmm. Not only does standardization help when you're implementing and supporting, but it also helps with quoting, because you know what to quote. And if you ever something that you sort of standardize on, usually, I'm not saying to be cookie cutter for every solution, because customized solution is usually the best. But if you have product familiarity and all that, then it's much easier to quote it as well, because you understand what you're quoting.
And there's a lot. No, I'm sorry, Jim.
I was going to say, and there's a lot that goes into the quoting, because you always need to basically overestimate, especially your time, and go, it's going to take me. It's never going to be as simple as, oh, it should only take an hour. Prime example, when my wife asked me, hey, how long is that project going to take? And I say, it should take about an hour. She goes, all right, so we'll be done in about 4 hours then. And you know what? She's right every time. So what were you going to say, Paul?
Well, I think one thing you can think of is quoting. Quoting is consulting, because you have to consult to do the quote. I mean, it really puts, it's really 2 and 2 together. And but it's the nature of the beast.
Well, and Paul, I'm not sure how you guys do quoting over there, but I know one of the things that John helped me with a while back was when in thinking about this, especially from our perspective of either doing this part-time or just as a one-person army, basically taking the time and going, I'm not sure exactly what it's going to cost, because I'm not sure what's going on, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out on site and I'm going to do a walkthrough, and I'm going to charge for it. I'm going to charge for walking through and seeing what needs to be done, but I'm going to gain a bunch of information. You can throw a number out there and say, it'll probably be around here. I'm not really sure, because I don't know exactly what you have. And that really helped. And the people that are serious about that and they want that information, you can put it in a nice document and go, here's all the information. You got paid for your time. And then you can go, you know what? Even if they go to somebody else with that quote, okay, but you still got paid for your time. So it's definitely not a loss. I can't imagine, and I probably used to do this years ago, but going back to the point of just trying to make quotes up and seeing if people would bite, and kind of taking that on. So but I'm with you guys as far as talking about the automation aspect of this. I think that you need to have some solid foundations to move from, and you can't always do the John Dubinsky and pull stuff out of thin air and just make stuff up.
I'm never gonna. I got to come up with some new ones. Those are getting old. All right. Although Paul is now the Dalai Lama with his quoting is consulting comment. So
yeah, I like that.
that is good. That is good.
Quoting
Paul's
is
going to fit right in.
And that's what made me think of that. I'm like, really, it is a consultation. And really, how many counselors do you know that don't get paid for their time?
I'm just glad we don't have to pay Paul for that because I'm going to use that all the time now.
That's right. So Paul, for the first 2 times, I'm going to give you credit. The third time, it's mine.
Okay, fair enough.
And then to add on to that quoting portion is don't forget to automate the process after you quote as much as that you can too. You know, your follow-up, and especially if the quote is accepted, depending on the size of your organization, pretty easy in a one-man army, but if your salespeople are engaging and now have closed a quote, you know, that probably usually has to pass to, again, depending on the size of the organization, to a product manager, then to technicians. And as far, you know, depending on that quote, let's say we're installing some fiber and you've quoted that out through a third party, you now have to engage with that third party, depending on how much facilities work has to be done. You know, the engagement, the actual installation of whatever is happening could be months away. So you know, you're going to have to keep in that whole quoting process or sales process, as we're talking, in line over that whole time. So there's a lot that you can keep automated. You know, there's things like Basecamp or other things that you can use that can tie in project management and all that kind of stuff, depending on the needs of your organization. But that can be a very tiresome and cumbersome pursuit, especially if you're a one-man army, or something that you really need to track if you have multiple Marines in your force. So.
Gotcha.
Very true.
So, Paul, I think we'll move on from this aspect. But when we talk about when we talk about automation, the first thing that comes to my mind, and John has said this many, many times, but that is, what can we do in our business in order to save me an hour a month or an hour a week or whatever that might be? So what are some of the things that we can look at as far as automation to be able to help us to save us that time and not have to touch something all the time?
Well, I'm thinking about when you said that question, I was thinking of two different things. I think it's like, what can we do from a business aspect, a business workflow aspect, and what can we do from an IT aspect? So from an IT perspective, anything that we can do manually, or anything from a manual work perspective, how can we automate setting up a new user, for example? Or how can we automate, approving invoices going out, as a business example? The biggest thing I can tell you to do, or from us, is just find a system that works with your business goals. And then really you have to, and that's one of my key points here, is you have to buy into it. You have to buy into that system. You have to train into that system, because you can't just get a system and, throw some customers in it and expect magic to happen. So it's an onboarding process, or it's an ongoing process, I should say, and to really do it. So what I would say do is think about each month. What are my pain points each month? Is it invoicing? Is it quoting? Is it just doing my day-to-day grind with tickets? Find out what that is and say, okay, how can I make this easier? Can I make my follow-ups easier with customers, and say from a sales perspective? I don't think there's really a definitive answer to that, Jeff. I'll just see what you're doing on a day in and day out basis, or just anybody listening, and just find out, okay, this is my hard point. Let's do some research. What can I do to make this easier? And then go from there. And to me, you're gonna have to have some form of system. I don't know what it is, and see some kind of CRM, some kind of system, ticketing system, whatever, or combination of the two, to help you do these things. Because doing it by yourself and doing it manually, it's brutal. And I've been there. I've really been there, and with a high volume, and it's very tough. It's very, very difficult.
Well, let's think about it like this. So from a standpoint of things like, let's say, email responses, or let's break it down. Let's say ticket responses via email. Mm-hmm. Probably one of the easier things to do. Now, one of the automations that you can have, because a lot of people are thinking, they're probably out there thinking, okay, how can you automate this stuff? Because there's still a certain amount of things you have to touch. Well, an automation to that would be copy and paste. And you can come up with responses that you do all the time day in and day out, year after year after year. And you can build up those templates or those responses where basically, I know in the in Repair Shopper, which I use, you can basically hit a little drop down arrow. And when I'm doing a diagnostic or something like that, I can give them the set information that maybe that customer is going to need. And so it's a click to go, boom, here you go. And I'll tell you, there's another thing that I've been using a lot lately, and that's on my phone. When you think about things like Google Mail, and Google is really good, especially on the Android side. I don't know about the weird iOS side. I mean, the iOS side. But from the Android standpoint, I know when I get that Gmail and it comes up and it reads my message, I know, scary. People are scared. It's okay. I don't care that they read my message. It's not that exciting. And so a customer will send me something, and I've usually got 3 responses down at the bottom. And you know what's cool? 90% of the time, one of those 3 responses will actually fit. I can hit that button and hit reply, and boom, I'm done. I'm in and out of that email instantaneously versus having to actually take the time, because I would wait a lot of times. I wouldn't send an email right away. So this makes my time that much faster, because I would sit there and I'd have to type it out. And everybody knows that typing on a phone is horrible. Actually, typing on a keyboard for me is semi-horrible. So I don't even like to do that. So having these quick responses in templates already set up, which Google's already done that for me, but I also have it set up in my CRM where I'm able to do it from there too. So,
well, one thing, when you said ticketing, one thing that came to mind right away was, in our ticketing system, we have a knowledge base, and we've been filling that thing in for years. And so, and our ticketing system has a customer portal. So if they can sign in and they can see their ticket, you know, where they at, who's responded to it, who's been assigned to it, blah blah blah. But what's really cool about it is they put a ticket. I don't have access to my G drive anymore. Well, when they put that in, that's our ticketing system picks up on keywords saying, okay, here's a knowledge base article on how to map your drive. And then we even have it somewhere it's filtered down based off the customer and the person who sends it in. So if that person that sends it in say, okay, I know this is an accounting person, so their G drive is going to go to this server / this UNC path, and it'll automatically tell them step by step what to do. So there's a lot of auto remediation that comes into that. Is it a lot of work to set that up? Absolutely. But does it save time in the long run? Absolutely. And then having those templates, like if you want to set up a new ticket, you got different drop downs for different various remedial tasks that happen a lot during the day. Instead of typing in from scratch, you have templates to do it, and then an auto checklist that pop up so you can follow through checklists, which helps automate at least automate your thinking of what you need to do.
Absolutely.
Here's a great place to start, or what I would start if you haven't picked this up yet and you haven't started this. What I would suggest you do, whether you work by yourself or in a team environment, is just set something up where people can track, either in your ticket system, or if you don't have one in your one-man show, just set up something in Google Keep or even a spreadsheet. And for 30 days, just keep a little running task list of everything that you do manually. So I had to reset the print spooler. I had to remap a drive. I had to, so on and so forth. You're just keeping this little list, and it's something that you can go on that might have a little bit of searching ability on it, so you can search for some keywords later. And then once you do this for 30 or 60 days, find a print spooler or find whatever that top item, or even perusing the list, and then automate that to remove it from you having to do it ever again. Or if a service is stopping for your client all the time, in your RMM product, have that service monitored and then have it restarted automatically, and then go to get a notification. Or maybe it's just something, if you're not realizing that this is where a ticketing system comes in big time too. Maybe it's something you're not recalling it, but it's happening quarterly, and it's something you have to put on your list quarterly. A nice thing about a ticketing system is that system might be able to tell you that it's happening. It actually might be something that you need to remediate, meaning something needs fixed. You shouldn't have to do something constantly every quarter, unless it's a maintenance item. There's another item you could script and automate, maintenance items or something. But a lot of these automation items could also be keys to signs that something is going wrong. So, I think the biggest thing here is just find some place to start to try to get that 1 hour back a week or a month that you're looking for through automation, whether that be in the technical side or on the sales side or even on the follow-up side.
Well said, John. All right, Paul. I know you probably have come up with a grand amount of notes because that's just the type of guy you are, and we can tell by the thoroughness of your show. So, is there any other points that we can touch on as far as what you were thinking about automating in your business, either on the business side or the IT side?
Well, I think we touched, like I said, I had it broken in two sections. I think we touched a lot on the business side. Now, and I got a whole bunch of stuff we can talk about on the IT side if you like.
All right, let's take a Let's take a quick break, and then we will go in. We'll go ahead and get into that. All right, our show today is brought to you by FreshBooks. A quick question for all you trailblazing freelancers. Yes, I'm talking to you. If you could reclaim up to 192 hours a year of precious time, would you? Our friends at FreshBooks, who make ridiculously easy to use cloud accounting software for freelancers, are the architects behind this question, and for good reason. By simplifying tasks like invoicing, tracking expenses, and getting paid online, FreshBooks has drastically reduced the time it takes for over 5 million people to deal with their paperwork. Nobody wants to deal with their paperwork. You need an easy solution. If that's not enough incentive, the FreshBooks platform has been rebuilt from the ground up. They've taken simplicity and speed to an entirely new level and added powerful new features. Oh, and if you're doing the math, 192 hours work out to 2 working days per month. 2, yes, you can gain, we were talking about an hour earlier, 2 working days per month. When tax time does roll around, you'll find tidy summaries of your expense reports, your invoice details, your sales tax summaries, and a lot more. If you're a freelancer listening to this and not using FreshBooks yet, now would be the time to try it. FreshBooks is offering a 30-day unrestricted free trial to my listeners. To claim it, just go to freshbooks.com/Podnutz. Enter Podnutz in the How Did You Hear About Us section. All right, let's go ahead and go into the automation on the IT side. Paul?
Okay, well, one thing we're probably thinking about, first thing we think automation, I think the first thing, at least for me, it probably comes to mind is probably a RMM tool, remote monitoring management tool, some kind of agent-based, something out there that helps manage our plethora of desktops and servers and networking equipment that we have to keep track of. And that's one thing that we really need to focus in, because your RMM tool should also be linked, at least in my opinion, should be linked into your at least your ticketing system, and that information should gather around. So if you have a ticket open and you have it linked to an asset, say to a desktop that has the agent, you should be in that same screen or that same flow where you can automatically just go to that desktop, remote into it, run certain tools and things like that. But with RMM, this is where, and not all RMM tools are alike. I've used a lot out there, and I don't know if I should go with names or recommendations or not. Policies.
Absolutely.
It's all opinion based, so yeah, that's fine.
I gotcha. Well, we went through, like I said, I've used some Autotask, which is ContraStage. I've seen demos of other ones. We're currently looking at that. What used to be called LabTech, now it's called ConnectWise Automate. And we've had, gosh, there's another one. What was the other one? I can't think of it. Oh, it's been a while. Anyway, that will come to me in a second. But they're not all alike. And one thing I like about the Automate process, that, and again, that's what we use, is it does a lot. The scripting power of the scripting is incredible. So for instance, if we get a message that comes in to say so-and-so has low disk space, easy example. Well, we have a script that automatically generates and says, okay, delete all 10 files. Delete the Windows Update cache repository, things like that, and it'll just do it for you. And what's the beauty of it? You can get paid for that and not even have a tech touch this computer. So it'll actually, you get the notification, which creates the ticket automatically, auto remediates, which runs the scripts and documents that, then closes the ticket, and it's done. And the tech hasn't even done it. It hasn't even touched it. And so that's where the power of something like this, that's where you can have 4 technicians supporting 2,000 endpoints. type of thing, or 2 technicians supporting 2,000 endpoints, and that's where the power comes in. And there's so much customizations to that. And one of the biggest things I can tell you for the listeners out there to really learn is to really focus in on PowerShell if you're in a heavy Windows environment, even batch processing or batch scripting, because once you have that, really, Scott, you can do anything you want for automation remediation. And anything that comes in, you got something that comes in, boom, kicks off a scan. Patch management, you have to be able to automate that. The power of task scheduler within the Windows environment, really take advantage of that and use that. And to me, everything from an IT perspective revolves around the user. You have the user, and then around that is you have, this is the platform these are the services the users use, the applications. Now behind the applications, you have hardware, you have all kinds, networking and everything else. But everything in IT really evolves around the user, doesn't it? The user is our customer, So even if you work for a company, that user is still your customer, and it's up to us to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure that user is productive as that person can humanly possibly be. And this is where we have all of our systems around. And so when we onboard these customers, we need to have a proven automation system to be able to do that. And again, my strength is in Windows. I'm a Windows nerd environment type of person. And that's where we need to have our group policies in place and our OU structure. So really you need to take time for every customer, large or small, to have a solid OU structure in place. And then we have proven group policies in each of those OU structures. So when we create the user, and we create the user based off a template as well, so it has all the group management and everything else that we have, and then we put that user in a particular OU, bam, it's automatically got all the policies. Now there are limitations to group policies, and this is where the RMM tools come in, because with group policies, you're limited to when a computer powers on and off to apply a policy, and you're limited to when a user logs on and off to apply a policy. Whereas RMM tools, it can apply policies real time based off of different times of day or different events that it picks up. Like John hit a perfect one. If it's monitoring a service and that goes off, it needs to automatically know to restart that service and also send notification that it's restarted that service and things like that. So your RMM tool is just critical when it comes to automation from an IT perspective, and how we onboard the user, how we manage that user, and how we offboard that user as well. Well said.
John?
Well, I don't know how I follow that one up. That's hitting the nail on the head right there. I will say I just sat through a demo of that ConnectWise, Paul, and that is pretty sweet. I mean, as far as setting up what you're monitoring, having the automatic resolution, automatic ticket creation, automatic fix, automatic closing the ticket, and automatic putting it in for billing, and even automatic billing. Yep. I mean, you're done. I mean, that's sort of the little fantasy where we just sit here and watch good movies while the RMM or our system does everything automatically. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but there are a lot of the RMM players now that are talking more and more about machine learning and AI getting involved with RMM procedures and all that. And there's a lot of buzzwords in that make you feel good, like sooner or later we're not going to have to do anything. But there is some truth to there. Implemented correctly, boy, ConnectWise is onto something there where that whole process has been automated. And as long as you have the reporting and the documentation to support all that, man, that is a high five.
Yeah, it really is. And even taken to another level, I got down here as infrastructure as well. And I do a lot of work with Azure. I have a lot of time invested into that. And what's so awesome about Azure, talking about automation, is that we'll take, for instance, a Citrix deployment, and to set up a Citrix deployment using best practices or even remote desktop services, it doesn't matter. Anyway, to set up all the services, the policies, all the settings, planning, and it can take days to get all that together and set up, and the patching alone, that is. Well, with Azure, you can set up. Well, actually, they have a store of cookie cutters. So you want to set up an RDP solution? Boom, there it is right there. It'll turn up all the VMs. It'll set all the best practices, and you're up in 30 minutes. No lie, it's mind blowing. But what if you have a custom solution? Maybe you need a database set up a certain way. Maybe you work for a software company, and you're in the hardware section of that software company, and you're in charge of having hardware solutions that you need to roll out to your customers. Well, with this, you can actually define, okay, you need a middle tier server, you need a terminal server, you need a SQL server, and maybe you got a web front end for like an e-commerce or something. And then they'll have different networking capabilities. They'll have different hardware capabilities, how much memory, processor and storage and everything you need. Well, you can build all that one time. You really take a lot of time, go through all your checks and balances, set that up, and then you can say that as a template in Azure. I'm not sure about AWS. I don't really have the experience in AWS. I'm assuming you can do that too in there. But then down the road, now you boom, you got to automate a ticket come in. You got to set up an infrastructure. You got to build this out. Boom, you hit a drop down list. It's set up in 30 minutes. You go in, do some fine tuning in that for customization for that one customer, and off you go. It's and that's, to me, that's the future. That's where it's coming down. On-premise hardware, I think it's slowly but surely it's getting less and less and less. Outside the switch and firewall, and then intrusion prevention, systems and things like that. But even to the desktop, you got imaging, and of course I think we all kind of do that now to a point. Instead of if you sell a fleet of laptops like we do, or desktops and laptops, we get a particular model in, fine tune it, then we image it, and then when we have Pixie boots, and when one of the process we have, workflows that we come in, automation process, if you will, is they'll put the laptop in, they'll Pixie boot, they'll find the image. Oh, this is for the latitude 5580, boop, 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 and it images it, and then they just do simple things like put it on the domain and simple things like that. So there's some additional automated process for that. But think about that imaging, but in an Azure perspective, but with all the networking and all the bells and whistles to make everything work, that you can roll out, and really at the speed of a mouse click. It's absolutely amazing.
And I'll add on to that, if guys are looking for a place to start, two things. One, let me start at the beginning. If you're wondering where a place to start is, I'll put in a link in the show notes and all that too. There's group policy is a great place to start. And I'm not even talking about group policy within what's called a domain or something like that. I'm just talking about group policy on an end machine. An example of that would be let's say you don't want your clients, computers, or endpoints to be able to log on with a Microsoft account. There's a little group policy that you can change that doesn't allow you to use a Microsoft account. You have to use a local account. Not that they can't use Microsoft accounts for products on the machine, they just can't log in with one. That's a simple yes/no change in group policy. I will put a list to all of the group policies that are available in Windows 10 in a spreadsheet that Microsoft provides in the show notes, and I just put it in the chat. But if you just read through this list, you will be amazed by all of the stuff that you can control on an endpoint just by creating a little script that either changes a registry key that you can push from your RMM, just in a simple point. And to circle back on that, my thing is, if you invested into something like anything that can script, an RMM or even some sort of light product that can do some sort of scripting, you shouldn't be doing anything anymore touching the keyboard, meaning you shouldn't be installing your endpoint protection from the keyboard. You shouldn't be installing your add-ons from the keyboard. You should be pushing those down from your RMM. So this should all be automated just by a couple clicks remotely. So the idea could be almost to the effect that you could ship a computer almost brand new out of the box, have your customer install it and say, just get this installed on the network and install this one file for me, whatever that agent is or whatever you need to get connected. And then you can automate everything else without even showing up pretty simply. Well, I don't want to say pretty simply, but you could, depending on the level of what you need.
Like you said, there's always that wishful thinking of the automation that we want to get to.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say it's easy, but the first 50%, the low-hanging fruit, is very easy, and you shouldn't discount yourself because that'll save you a lot of the time. The simple stuff like pushing out your AV, pushing out, whatever you're doing, that kind of stuff, that should be done because you're not making any money by doing that, and you're just wasting time. Now, the things that get more complex, like what Paul was talking about, somebody that knows what they're doing may have hours into creating that deployment from Azure. But if that's something that you do often, it takes you hours every time you do it. Well, now Paul's clicking a button and it's almost done. So he might have taken a 4-hour or 5-hour process and configuration and done two huge things. One, gotten all of that billable time in a very short period because it's automated. Two, he's removed all of the factors of human error in that process. Simply by fat fingering something. Paul, I won't spoil it, Paul, but you just told an interesting story on your last podcast where you made a little configuration error. I just did something similar too. I had a client too where I kind of goofed something up and I was like, oops, and I had to go back in and uncheck that box and, make things work again. But, that's another huge benefit of automation is you take out the human error, is obviously assuming that whatever you've automated has been tested and is working correctly. But that's a big point too.
Yeah, and that's a product line. And yeah, he's referring to a Meraki story. So yeah, it's a good story. Definitely check it out. But Meraki does that. It's also because we've been moving a lot over to the Meraki platform, and it spoils you. It really does. I mean, for configuration management, but it builds templates. So for instance, if you have a router or a firewall that you need, or a switch access point that you need to implement, one of the first things it asks you is like, do you want to copy the config from a different one? Sometimes you don't, because it's, it's say a different customer, different, new setup. But say it's an existing customer or something like-minded customer, you say, yeah, just copy the config from that. Then boom, it's done. You might have to change the SSID name, or you might have to change the local IP under addressing, but that's it. It's basic, because all you can set up all the QoS as time consistent. If you have DHCP policies, if you have all the threat management, all that takes time to set all that information up, all your traffic shaping rules, firewalling policies. Because if you have different compliance needs for different customers, obviously there are certain ports, outgoing ports that you want to do. Because if you don't filter your outgoing ports, shame on you. You need to filter outgoing ports. That shouldn't be set to any. That's just a tip. But you can have all that set up so you're not repeating yourself. And I think, John, you were disconnected earlier when I said this, when I was talking to Jeff, is we need to be consistent, and having a system, and being human, we need a system to make us consistent. And but Meraki will automate a lot of things for you. I mean, that's one of the premiums that you're paying for with the cloud support or the cloud management of it. But it's amazing what it can do for you and how much time it can save you, and the visibility that it gives you is incredible.
And that's another thing the automation will get you too. Paul, I'm off and disconnected in many ways. So says Jeff. But but by automating, you've just copied over your verified settings that already work, already meet your compliance standards, and whoever's setting up that gear the next time, although they may be a seasoned pro, they may forget to check the one drop down or do something. So you've already eliminated all that. Plus, you've adhered to your documentation by using an automation or a configuration script or something that's already in place.
Well, I tell you, configuration management, that used to be such a pain, and it still is to a point. What I mean by configuration management, I think about this more in the networking realm, but of course it can be applied to different disciplines and for IT. But backing up your config, creating baselines, detecting out of process changes, meaning another tech went in and did something it wasn't supposed to, and we need to be alert. Like, this config is not against the baseline, and having those having those checks, auditing, automatic remediation. Those used to be extremely time consuming, and now, like, for instance, like, just if you just had traditional network setup, but now say that Meraki, for instance, is a prime example. It makes configuration management a breeze now. Stuff that used to take you a very long time to manage and to do it properly, they just do it for you. I mean, that cloud management just does it all for you, and it just saves you so much time.
Now, one of the things that I think a lot of people will, and we've talked about this a little bit, when we're talking about automation, they'll think about, well, wait a minute, how much time is this going to take me to set these things up? But I think a lot of people are forgetting that the time that you put in now is going to save you way more time later down the road, especially if you're doing this for the long term. It's not like, hey, I'm here today, gone tomorrow. It's something that you can move consistently forward in your business.
Well, obviously, don't spend 4 hours, 5 hours automating something that you do twice a year that takes you 5 minutes, or maybe that you don't see, and unless that you are at the bottom of your automation list and everything else is so automated that you have nothing else to do. And if you are at that point, please call me, because I would be happy to come work for you in any sort of capacity necessary. But again, I go back to my low-hanging fruit analogy. I mean, I'm walking around under my tree and I'm getting hit in the head with fruit all the time about all this stuff that I could automate and fix. So, I've just been picking that one at a time, trying to eliminate that. And then, and I actually started with who runs my office, and we started within the financial portion of our business. And we started the process with our invoicing, billing, and even automation on the back end with credit card payments and all that kind of stuff. So that my time wouldn't be spent on the non-value added portion of invoicing, and then her time would not be spent on the non-value added time. I shouldn't say that. It should be greatly reduced in reconciling and paying. So that took a lot of time off my time and a lot of time off hers. And even that isn't even technical focus. That's kind of where we started at the beginning with sales, but that would be back end business process. But even those sort of things, there are time savings there. So now maybe I save myself an hour a month in invoicing that I can now go bill for, or I can do some sort of something else that's value added in my business.
Or even value added in your life.
Yeah, that's right. That's an extra hour in the hot tub.
There you go. Gotta love that. All right, let's take another quick break, and we'll kind of wrap this subject up, and maybe you talk about a couple of emails that have come in. If you guys are really like what we're doing here and you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/computer repair podcast. And I want to thank our newest Patreon supporters. We have Matthew Reebstock and Clayton Nichols and Dave Greenbaum. I want to thank you all for contributing. I really appreciate it. And that also gets you into the secret Facebook group where people are nice and do not make fun of each other too much. No, it's a safe place where you can ask any question possible, and people will rise up to the occasion and answer those questions in a nice way, not answering with a non-answer, which we find in a lot of other Facebook groups. So anyways, if you want a safe place, it's the maximum amount is like if you give $1 per episode, it's like $4 a month. If you can give up that one Starbucks a month and, contribute to the show. But it definitely helps out with things like, I don't know, when things like mixers and whatnot break. It's nice to be able to, basically rebuy those things and not have it come out of my pocket. So, I want to thank all of our current Patreon supporters for your continued support. I thank each and every one of you very much. And just thank you. All right. So let's wrap this automation topic up. Is there anything that is, and we've talked about a lot of things. Obviously, we got to take time to do it. We've got to put forth an effort. We've got to be thinking consistently in moving forward our business. And I think automation is a enormous part of it. I know it's something we're always seeking. And there is the pain before the pleasure in this particular circumstance. But is there anything else we need to touch on, Paul, that maybe we haven't talked about as far as the automation?
Well, a lot of it is just looking at software that can do it. Like, for instance, that change management solutions. Like, hey, I don't have Meraki. What can I do? SolarWinds makes a product called Network Configuration Manager that would do a lot, like I was telling you about, backing up your network configurations, setting up a baseline, detecting who's making changes that are not compliant, auditing, things like that. So there's a lot of software that can do it for you. So really take the time, do some research out there. But you hit the nail on the head, Jeff. Everybody has to buy in on it. You can have the greatest software solution in the world, and if you don't use it or you don't put the effort into it, it doesn't matter. If if it was $100 or if it was $1 million, it doesn't matter. So, and really buy into it, take the time and set it up properly, and hopefully it'll save you a lot of time.
Yep. And here's the other thing too, before John pipes in, is that sometimes you need to try something and it might not work, or it might not work for you and how your business is set up. And that's okay. You can take that as a learning experience. A lot of people will look at when you fail, they'll look at that as a failure. I don't look at it as a failure. I look at it as a opportunity for me to learn something new. Either I don't ever want to do that again, or I find a better solution that's going to help me in whatever it is I need to do. John, is there anything else that you can think about as far as automation that we haven't touched on that you want to wrap up with?
No, I mean, I'll second what you just said. Obviously, as you know, Jeff, we've talked about, and a lot of the other guys know that, 2017, I did just what you said. I tried a lot of different products. I actually split my endpoints between some RMMs and tested them. And I actually moved from G Suite to a hosted exchange and tried that for a couple months. And all along that process, I tested some migration from G Suite to Exchange and from Exchange back to G Suite and played with some RMMs and made some decisions. And, all of that was extremely painful and an extremely good experience and took a lot of time, but I'm much wiser for that now. And I'm where I want to be now. And it really focused me on some other things and opened my eyes to some other things on what was available and where I wanted to take my business and how I wanted to run my business. Again, I think Paul's point on you must buy into the solution. I think all of us have this huge failure where we jump into a product, let's say an RMM, we learn about 10 or 15% of it, and then we decide we're going to jump to something else. We don't even get invested into the real product that paybacks that product might get us. And then on the final note, I think you mentioned this at the beginning, Jeff, is try to find a couple guys around you, or in today's day and age, maybe a small mentor group that are using like or similar or the same products as you, and pound on each other. What are you doing this month? What scripts? What's your favorite scripts? How are you doing this? It's a lot more fun to get through the grind. Come on the show with us and let's talk about it. Get in the group and let's talk about it, or just get some guys that you can cuss at each other and learn from each other and have a little fun along the way.
Absolutely. Well said, John. And I will say this, that experience is the best teacher as long as it's somebody else's experience. And so with that, let's go ahead and answer a couple of emails. It says, hey, Jeff, I love this show. I tune in every week. I'm writing because I heard you talk about Google's new IT course. I'm actually in this course and love it. It's actually pretty basic information, but it's great for like a refresher on certain topics. So I'm enjoying it, and I love the idea about being certified by Google. So that's my take on it. That's awesome information. Appreciate that. It is $50 a month, but I applied for the Google Financial Assistance and was accepted quickly. They're basically accepting anyone that actually fills out the application in full. There you go. Barrier to entry. Filling out the application in full. You'd be surprised how many people can't do that.
Read the manual. Are you kidding me?
Yes. So I'm taking the course at no charge. That is awesome. That's the information we were looking for. So appreciate that. Besides the fact that it is a pretty basic course, it would be great for beginners in the IT field. And as an added bonus, Google will shop you around if you're looking for a job in the IT field. That's pretty cool. I consider it to be a worthwhile course. Take care. Maybe I'll see you at the ITO Compass. Yes, you will, as long as you're going and have a ticket. Regards, Greg Foltz, and I believe he is, Lead Geek IT Specialist. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that, and thank you for the feedback on that particular certification. Paul, have you heard of the Google certification that they talked about? I think started, I don't know, a few months ago.
Yeah, I did, and that's smart from Google's point, and I think they're just trying to get more. Let's face facts, Office 365 is their biggest competitor. So they're like, if we get more trained people and they can deploy more, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist trying to figure out what they're trying to do. And, but it's a good plan. I mean, I think that's a smart move on Google's part.
Absolutely. John, anything to say about that?
Well, along the lines of training, I'm not very proficient in PowerShell, and that's something that I would be interested in getting more proficient in. What I do now is I would call myself a hack. I've used my Google Foo and I've written some scripts and all that kind of stuff, but it's usually trial and error. And then I write the PowerShell script, and then it does not work or come even close to working. And then I go out and Google and bit by bit and spend a lot of time. So one or two things. I'm either looking for a solution where I can find somebody to write scripts for me, or if anybody else is interested, I know we're all going to ITO Compass, but there's got to be somewhere else where we could go to maybe do a crash course for a couple of days in PowerShell scripting. So if that interests anybody else, hit me up in the group or something, and maybe we can get a group of us guys and go do some PowerShell training together.
That's a great idea, John. I like that. Yeah, I definitely... I remember back in the day, speaking of, sitting there and rewriting INI files and different things to get, joysticks and, games to work and all this kind of weird stuff I had to do back then. And nowadays it's like I so lazy I don't want to do any of that stuff. But like Paul said earlier, scripting and even batching stuff is so powerful in the automation of your business. So
well, even delving into the hosted applications in Microsoft like Azure and Office 365 and Exchange on up there. I mean, you can control all that through PowerShell now too. So
yeah,
it's the wave of the future.
That's right. It's the cat's meow. All right, so let's see. Our second email says, "Hey Jeff, I'm a new listener to the show, and I really enjoy the content you're putting out. Thanks for taking the time to make such a great podcast." You're welcome. I wanted to comment on episode 272 in regards to clothing that everyone mentioned they wore. I heard that polyester seems to be the go-to for those on the show. However, this type of fabric tends to create more static electricity than cotton or linen and can cause damage to the delicate components inside many devices. The best practice is to steer clear of anything with polyester. Thank you again for producing such a great show, and I look forward to listening to your next podcast. Regards, Alex Albert. All right, so first of all, John, before you say anything.
I'm not saying anything. I'm a silk. I'm only silk only, baby.
Silk guy. Okay, so I like my silk. So I agree with you. Static electricity can definitely be an evil to electronics. I can say I've been touching electronics for a very long time. Matter of fact, a lot longer than some of you have been around. And I have yet, now I'm not saying it can't happen, but I don't wear a static wrist strap or anything like that. I've yet to fry a component. Now, John and I were talking about this the other day. And
so what was his name?
Alex.
I mean, Alex is onto something. If you're the guy that's sitting in the back doing board level repair all day long,
yeah,
come on, dress appropriately, use a static wrist strap, have a static map, be there. But if you're a network schlep like I am, and you're going in and you're sitting in a chair all day working on your computer and doing, be smart about your ESD, your static control, and all that kind of stuff. But to Alex's point, yes, be aware of your environment and dress appropriately. Period.
Yeah. And the other thing too is obviously there are, if you look at blends of shirts and different things that are out there, obviously blends are going to be a little bit different. Now, I'm not sure exactly what this shirt is made of, but there's no static buildup. It's one of those sports shirts where you can basically sweat through it and smell really bad, but you're still dry. So they're great when it comes to that. But I'm with, when it comes to things like cotton is much more comfortable from a comfort standpoint, but at the same time, it can also be quite a bit hotter. So, yeah.
Well, let's give Alex just a little bit of kudos. I know we're kind of picking on him a little bit, but
all in fun.
All in fun, but let's be honest. The more I think about it, he does bring up a good point. I mean, if you're going to be in that environment, it is something to consider. If you're the guy that's pulling out the boards, if you're doing the laptop board repair, if you're doing the screen repairs a lot, if that's your job, I mean, there's, Paul's point, let's just go back to what he was talking about, configurations and all the variables there. Well, that's one. Now we're talking about these other variables that have nothing to do with the IT. They have to do with the environments that we're sitting in. So it's a consideration, to his point.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is something you definitely, it's one of those things where I wouldn't, if you can feel when there's like static electricity built up on your clothing, because it's just, you're constantly, it's like, so yeah, those types of clothing I definitely wouldn't wear anyways, because to me, they'd be uncomfortable. So, and I definitely don't want to build that up. And it's not like I'm rubbing my socks across the floor before I pull apart a laptop. I just take the screwdriver and touch 2 points and make sure that's, I discharge everything that's in there. Just kidding. No, good point.
Had to go there. Yeah. Okay.
Something to think about. Paul, what kind of shirts do you wear?
I personally, I'm a cotton guy. I just wear cotton, and I guess the biggest tip I could say is just don't wear wool socks. I guess
Okay. No wool socks.
Well, in all seriousness, though, I think a lot of it's the environment and your HVAC system. Because if it's super dry, like especially in the wintertime when that heat's pumping, in our workbench area, we split off into, where the help desk sits at. Man, I shock myself every time going on that doorknob during the winter time, because the air is so dry, and it builds up that it's almost impossible not to shock yourself whether you're wearing the proper attire or not.
Okay.
Well, that's a good consideration too. Be aware of your environment. I mean, if you're getting shocked all the time, that's where humidifier, dehumidifier, or whatever you need to put in place to help minimize that. So yeah, it's kind of fun to pick on Alex, because I would never have thought that either. But that ends up being a pretty awesome email, just to consider the little things on whatever you're working on.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right, John. It's not something that would have come to the forefront of my mind, but for somebody to pick that information up and go, hey, did you think about this? And again, this is where I always say, and this is important, you can always learn from somebody that's in the business, whether they're brand new, been doing it for 20 years, been doing it for 50 years, you can always learn something. So, hey, we learned something. Let's consider what you're doing in the environment that you're working in.
And Alex could be one of those board nerds that's replacing transistors on boards and all that makes what, I do look like preschool toys. So, kudos to him.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. I think that was the last. We do have another email, but we'll go into that in another time. I'm going to actually make a whole show out of that. So I think we are at that time to end off the show. Paul, if people want to know where to find you at in the awesome podcast that you do, where would they go?
Well, my website is sysadmin, sysadmin today.com. And they can, got a big old subscribe button right there. They can get to, they can get contact from me. There's a place to send me a message, or just send me one at paul@sysadmintoday.com as well.
Awesome. Appreciate you coming out in the show and bringing this topic today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. And John, could you let people know either, I don't know, something cool, or maybe where they could find you at?
Well, here's another tip I could use is Paul has a sweet resource page on his website as well that has a lot of cool stuff in it. So if you happen to have an hour down or whatever, and you want to go get some cool tips, he's got a great resource page on Sysadmin Today. And if you want to find me, let's all meet up in the Podnutz group.
Awesome, man. Appreciate that. All right, come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/CRP Live. Join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room. We got people hanging out in there asking questions and talking and carrying on conversations. You can send an email to podnutz@podnutz.com, and we'll actually read it on the show and try to answer the questions and be nice. Or you can leave a voicemail if you want your voice to be right beside us, and you can do that at 734-335-1000. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on the Computer Repair Podcast.